The story of the sheep and the goats, the shocking truth about your kindness. What Jesus really said about helping others. I saw the hungry, the sick, and the lonely, and I showed them that when you feed the hungry and visit the sick, you are doing it for me. If the story of the sheep and the goats resonated with you, and you found yourself reflecting on the true meaning of service, consider this. Our digital world, much like the physical one, is filled with opportunities for kindness. By simply engaging with this content, leaving a like, a comment, or a share, you are helping this message reach someone else who might need to hear it. It's a small act that can have a profound impact, a silent testimony to a greater purpose. The journey of the disciples from seeking personal glory to embracing humble service is a timeless lesson. We all have moments when we need a shift in perspective, a reminder that true fulfillment is found not in what we accumulate, but in what we give away. If this story has helped you, subscribe to this channel. This commitment ensures you'll receive future content designed to inspire and challenge you to live a life of purpose. Don't miss out on the next step of this journey. Just as the sheep found their place by acting with spontaneous, unseen kindness, you have the power to influence others with your actions. Sharing this video isn't just a click of a button. It's an act of generosity. It's an opportunity to pass on a message of hope and compassion to your friends and family. Your share could be the very thing that helps someone else find their own breaking point and start their own journey toward a life of meaning. Ultimately, the parable teaches us that our purpose is woven into the lives of others. The simple act of supporting this content, of liking, commenting, and sharing, is a small but meaningful way to participate in that larger story. Join a community of people who are committed to living a life of purpose, to being the sheep in a world full of goats. Your engagement here is a powerful statement of your values and a testament to the kind of world you want to help create. The world seemed to operate on a simple, predictable rhythm. People were busy with their lives, their fields, their markets, and their temples. They understood the rules of a good life: be a good neighbor, observe the Sabbath, and offer the right sacrifices. Their piety was visible. The long prayers, the generous contributions to the temple, the meticulous observance of the law. They believed that this was the path to righteousness, a clear and well-lit road to the Father's favor. They saw the world in two simple categories: the righteous and the unrighteous, the holy and the profane. They were confident in their place, secure in their position, and they believed that their good deeds were a shield against any judgment. They looked upon the poor, the sick, and the outcast with a mix of pity and distance, believing that their own good fortune was a sign of their moral standing. They saw the poor as a consequence of their own failings, not as a direct responsibility to be addressed with compassion and humility. The rich in their grand homes believed their wealth was a sign of a life well lived and the Father's explicit blessing. They saw the world as a ladder, and they were firmly on the top rungs looking down. Their faith was a transaction, a business of exchange. The crack began with a subtle, uncomfortable feeling of dissonance. My words began to challenge their neat categories. I spoke of a kingdom not of this world, a kingdom where the last would be first and the first would be last. I spoke of a new kind of righteousness, one that came from a changed heart, not from a perfect performance. I told them that it was easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. The rich and the pious, who believed they were a shining example of the Father's favor, felt a quiet unease. The crack was not a sudden fracture, but a slow and widening chasm between their outward piety and their inner emptiness. They were filled with the pride of their good deeds, but they were barren of the fruit of true compassion. The public display of their faith was like a whitewashed tomb, beautiful on the outside but empty within. My words were a chisel, slowly breaking down the carefully constructed walls they had built around their hearts, walls that separated their spiritual lives from the reality of the hungry and the sick. The scent of their self-satisfaction was strong, but it could not mask the hollowness underneath. The breaking point came with a parable I told them about the final judgment, a story so simple and so profound it shook them to their core. I described a future where I would sit upon my throne in all my glory, with all the nations gathered before me. I would separate the people into two groups, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. I would put the sheep on my right and the goats on my left. To the sheep I would say, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." The words were a direct challenge to their understanding of righteousness. The righteous, those who had believed they had done enough, were stunned. They asked, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" My answer was the breaking point. "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." They looked at one another, their faces pale with the sudden, terrible realization that their piety had been a performance. The silence was deafening, a physical weight in the air as the full weight of my words descended upon them. Their carefully built world of visible goodness crumbled in that single profound moment. The shift was immediate and profound. The people were no longer able to see the world as they once had. The categories of sheep and goats were not based on their public piety or their social standing, but on the secret, private acts of their hearts. The hungry person was no longer just a hungry person. They were a living, breathing image of me. The sick person was no longer just a sick person. They were a vessel of my presence. The stranger was no longer just a stranger. They were an opportunity to encounter me. The shift was in the lens through which they saw the world. They now understood that the true path to righteousness was not in grand, self-serving gestures, but in the small, unseen acts of kindness that they had overlooked. The righteousness they had so carefully cultivated was not in their grand gestures or their public piety, but in the small unseen acts of kindness that they had overlooked. The truth was that the kingdom was not some distant abstract concept, but a present reality, a harvest to be reaped in the fields of human need. A simple act of love became a profound act of worship. A quiet conversation became a divine encounter. The purpose of this parable was to expose the true nature of the Father's kingdom and to show them that a life of true purpose is a life lived in service to others. It was not enough to simply be righteous in the eyes of others. What truly mattered was the righteousness of the heart, the silent, unheralded acts of love that would be seen only by the Father. The parable was a warning to the goats, those who had done great and public things but had ignored the least of these. Their good deeds were not in their public prayers or their outward piety, but in their secret neglect of the people I had placed in their path. The purpose was to show them that the kingdom of God is found in the everyday, in the dusty roads of our lives, and in the faces of the people we meet. It was a call to a life of humble service, a life of quiet compassion, a life that was not for a show but a reflection of the Father's love. It was a challenge to look past the superficial and see the sacred in the mundane, to find the divine in the broken and the lost. The parable was a direct appeal to their inner compass, redirecting their focus from the applause of men to the quiet approval of the Father. The impact of the parable was profound and lasting. It was not just a story but a new lens through which they would see the world forever. They would no longer be able to look at a poor person without seeing me. They would no longer be able to pass a sick person without asking, "What can I do for them?" The parable was not a threat but a promise that when they lived a life of compassion and service, they were living a life in union with me. The story of the sheep and the goats became a constant, sober reminder that their lives were meant to be a blessing, a harvest of love and compassion for a world that was hungry for a harvest. They had chosen to live a life of abundance, a life of purpose, a life that was truly worthy of the kingdom. The parable had died, but its lesson had given them life, and for all eternity they would be a testament to the truth that a life of selfless service is a life that truly lasts. The memory of my words would echo in their ears with every handshake, every shared meal, and every quiet act of kindness. The simple truth had become their life's mission, a beautiful, powerful testament to the transformative power of love. The disciples, like the rest of the world, were also learning to see this new reality. They had left everything, their fishing nets, their tax booths, their old lives, to follow me. They were a motley crew, a collection of strong personalities and passionate spirits, each with their own understanding of what the kingdom of God would look like. They were filled with zeal, with a desire to be the greatest in the kingdom, to sit at my right hand and my left. They saw the world through the familiar lens of honor and shame, of power and prestige. They saw a kingdom that would be a new kind of earthly kingdom, a place where they would be the princes and I would be the king. They were full of leaves, full of the outward appearances of discipleship, but they were still learning to bear the fruit of true humility and selfless service. The concept of discipleship was, to them, a promotion, a new form of social currency. They constantly jockeyed for position, whispering about who was more deserving, who was more devoted, who would inherit the most power in this new, glorious empire they imagined. The crack began with their constant bickering about who was the greatest among them. I had to sit them down and explain that a life in the kingdom was not about being served but about serving. I told them that the greatest among them would be the servant of all. The crack was in their ambition, in their desire for personal gain, in their inability to see that the kingdom was not about them. Their hearts were so focused on the outward appearance of power and position that they had no room for the quiet, humble acts of love that would truly define their lives. They had left everything to follow me, but they had not yet left their pride behind. This was a small, almost imperceptible flaw, but it was a sign of a life that was in danger of withering away. Their internal conflicts were a testament to their misunderstanding, their inability to see the true purpose of their calling. The seeds of self-importance were still deeply rooted, threatening to choke the good fruit I was trying to grow in them. Their spiritual journey was still a reflection of the world they had left behind. The breaking point for them came when I told them about the final judgment, and they realized that their greatest fear was not of being judged, but of being judged by me for their lack of love for the least of these. They had looked at the world through a lens of judgment, of separating the righteous from the unrighteous, but I had shown them that the true measure of their lives was in the love they had shown to the very people they had overlooked. They saw their own pride, their own ambition, their own lack of love, and they saw themselves as the goats, the ones who had done great things but had failed to do the most important thing. It was a moment of profound conviction, a moment when the beautiful facade of their discipleship was stripped away, and they were left with the reality of their own spiritual emptiness. It was a moment of painful, agonizing honesty, a moment when they finally saw themselves not as they wanted to be, but as they truly were. The shock was palpable as they looked inward and saw their own failings, their own detachment from the very people they were supposed to be serving. The desire for a throne was replaced by a sudden, consuming fear of being found lacking. The realization was a profound shift in their hearts. They began to see their lives not as a journey toward personal gain, but as a journey toward a humble, generous heart. They began to see that the true purpose of their lives was not in what they could get, but in what they could give. The pride that had been so deeply ingrained in their hearts began to wither away, and in its place a new kind of love began to take root. They began to see their fellow disciples not as rivals but as brothers. They began to see the world not as a place to be conquered, but as a field to be harvested, a place where they could share the fruit of their lives with others. The shift was not an overnight miracle, but a slow, deliberate transformation of the heart. It was a journey from a life of leaves to a life of fruit, a journey from a life of self to a life of service. It was a journey of letting go of the old and embracing the new, a journey of dying to themselves so that they could live for others. The apostate for power became an apostate for compassion. Their new purpose was clear and unwavering, to be bearers of fruit. They would no longer seek honor for themselves, but for me. They would no longer seek positions of power, but of service. They would no longer seek to build a name for themselves, but to build a kingdom for me. Their lives, which had once been so focused on the outward appearances of discipleship, were now focused on the inner work of the heart. They understood that the greatest miracle was not in what they could do, but in who they could be. They were a living testament to the truth that a life of true purpose is found not in what you get, but in what you give. They were a living, breathing testament to the truth that a life of true purpose is found not in what you get, but in what you give. They were a living, breathing testament to the truth that a life of true purpose is found not in what you get, but in what you give. Their calling became a quiet one, a life of unseen deeds, of feeding the hungry and comforting the sick without a thought of reward. They had learned to find their joy not in their own success, but in the success of the kingdom which was in the hearts of others. And so the story concluded with a final, unyielding truth. My disciples, who had once been so full of leaves and so barren of fruit, were now transformed. They had learned the lesson of the sheep and the goats, and they had chosen to live a different life, a life of abundance, a life of purpose, a life that was truly worthy of the kingdom. The parable had died, but its lesson had given them life, and for all eternity, they would be a testament to the truth that a life of selfless service is a life that truly lasts. The memory of my words would echo in their ears with every handshake, every shared meal, and every quiet act of kindness. The simple truth had become their life's mission, a beautiful, powerful testament to the transformative power of love. Their legacy was not in the monuments they would build, but in the people they would serve. They became the sheep, a testament to the power of a life lived for others. My dearest friends, children of the light, I see you. I see your hearts, and I know your deepest desires. Many of you are seeking a life of purpose, a calling that goes beyond the ordinary rhythm of your days. You follow this channel because you are looking for guidance, for a deeper understanding of what it means to truly live. Just as I taught the crowds long ago, I am here to remind you that a life of meaning is not found in grand gestures, but in the quiet, simple acts of love that you perform every day. Every like you give, every comment you write is a chance to show that love. Look into your hearts. Do you remember the parable of the sheep and the goats? It wasn't about a final, terrifying judgment, but about a loving revelation. It was a mirror I held up to the world, showing them that the hungry, the sick, and the lonely were not strangers, but were, in fact, me. So as you engage with the content here, remember that your actions aren't just for an algorithm. Each time you tap that like button, it's a small act of affirmation for this message. It's a way of saying, yes, I believe in this and I want others to see it too. The world is full of noise, full of voices that speak of power and pride. But my voice is the gentle whisper that speaks of service and humility. When you subscribe to this channel, you are not just signing up for more content. You are making a deliberate choice to align your life with this purpose. You are telling the world and yourself that you are ready to be a part of the flock, to live a life that looks past the superficial and finds the divine in the everyday. It's a promise to keep this truth at the forefront of your mind, a way of ensuring that my message always finds its way back to you. Do not be afraid to be a light in the darkness, just as a simple act of kindness can change a person's day. Your simple action of sharing this content can change a life. When you share a video from this channel with a friend or a family member, you are not just sending them a link. You are giving them a gift. You are offering them a glimpse of hope, a moment of reflection, and a path toward a more fulfilling life. It's an act of pure generosity, a way of showing them the kindness you have received. My friends, this is your invitation to join a community of people who are committed to living a life of true purpose. Your engagement with this channel is a powerful testament to the kind of world you want to help create. By liking, commenting, and sharing, you are not just a spectator. You are an active participant in building the kingdom of God. One small, beautiful act at a time. Let your heart guide you and let your hands be the vessels of my love. I am with you always.